34.75, Val right there. Price ticks down. And then it looks like they pull because there aren't a lot of market orders. That entire 3-tick column here to 55, they jump down and then they're immediately pulled. 55.9, 15, and 28 at 34.75. That's interesting. Val at 35. So pocket shifted. Looks like value shifting lower because they're building value here on the low side. And there's a thin spot here, 34 to 34.50. We're holding below value here. And they walk it down to 34 on on the thin spot. So it looks like 717. And then price closes at 33.75. Then we move back up into the value area. And then we've already hit it once. We've traversed out of it once. And the value has shifted lower, 34.75. And we traversed under 33.25 and 722. A bidder shows up. The node. So here, 33, 32.75. There's an auction there, 24 and 11. It looks like they pulled again, so there wasn't even a bidder. It's just sellers pulling orders because the market column is empty, and they facilitate an auction at 33.75. And then the buyer steps in for 4 ticks. 30, 14, 22. And then we run up to high of day on what looks like a steady auction, so nobody pulling because there's buy and sell volume. 37.50. Price slows down. We push high of day. Price slows down again at the high, but that doesn't mean anything. We're watching for the seller. And then the seller hits the ask. 18, 13, 33, 19. It stops there. He steps in again. It ladders down to 35.25, which is where the node is. Strong seller. Elvian traversal. And then we get below the node. And either the seller shows up again or buyers pull. I think the seller shows up again because he was up here. Okay, it's just a stair step down with a little bit of participation down to 33.25. Then we traverse the LVN, and then we fill out the distribution. You see attempted value area high rejection at 33. And that seller who's present up there shows up again. We accept back into value for now. I mark it down as uh, value area acceptance from sellers. $31.75, so there's a new node there. We come off of it, there's a buyer there, 20 and 15. So buyers want higher prices. And then did they pull again? And they pulled again. So the moves in this market have been driven by the sell side pulling 1, 2, 3, 4 ticks 3 times now. Little participation. There's a little bit, but they just don't want to sell into value. I wrote it down as big kick from buyer. Revisit of LBN, and I thought this was going to fill out, and I took a guess because if the market's filling out here, I think it's going higher because it's forming a new distribution above. It's just hitting the LBN and value area over and over again. Hit of 35s, which is the end of the thin spot. Revisit. Controversial to 36.50, which is right there. Slow tape at 36.75. The market's just stopped. $3,775. Did we get to 3,775? Yes. Yeah, and that's an active seller up here at the highs. It's not somebody pulling. 21 and 18. So the seller doesn't want to sell here, and they like it up there. They'll pull their orders, and the market will slowly drift upward. Buyer steps in at 36, flat. I wrote it down as buyer steps in. It looks like they pulled 3 orders. They pulled 2, 1, 2, 3, and then 1 bid at 36. $34.50. Value area low, which is there. Speed of tape picks up. I read this as a bullish bias, which is sort of true because sellers pulled here, but at the high there's still sellers. And then there's a new high of day, nothing really worth writing home about. Price comes down to 36.75. We drift through it, so we're looking for 34.75. Price comes back up again, sits there, so it's stagnating in the balance area, forming a new auction. And this is buyer and seller driven, so it's a real auction and not somebody pulling offers. Nothing happens, and then 10 minutes later, still nothing. VPOC shifts for the day. After VPOC shifts, when was this, 8:12? There's seller participation up there. Then we see a jump and this guy pulling his orders again. So it looks like somebody facilitated an auction there just to sell because they were pulling at prices they thought to be unfair, and they were selling in the prices they thought to be fair. And then there's a new high of day, nothing really worth writing home about. Price comes down to 36.75. We drift through it, so we're looking for 34.75. Price comes back up again, sits there, so it's stagnating in the balance area, forming a new auction. And this is buyer and seller driven, so it's a real auction and not somebody pulling offers. Nothing happens, and then 10 minutes later, still nothing. VPOC shifts for the day. After VPOC shifts, when was this, 8:12? There's seller participation up there. Then we see a jump and this guy pulling his orders again. So it looks like somebody facilitated an auction there just to sell because they were pulling at prices they thought to be unfair, and then they were selling in the prices they thought to be fair. High of day blip at 8:13. But it's not marked. Large order bid stack. This is what I wanted to talk about. So typically, when you see a large order in the book, now what happened today multiple times is instead of it being pulled and sellers being lured and sellers being lured into it only for him to pull the bid and send price lower, price will plunge up and stack behind this 124 for a couple ticks, maybe 3 to 5. And then 117, it's sold, and then somebody immediately throws 100 on the ask, which makes me wonder if it was a hedge. It traded, and then there's a blip near high of day off of that order. And then that same plunge I was talking about, notice how the Q on the ask fills and we sell lower down to VPOC. Let's skip through this because there's a lot to go through. What did I say here at 8:23? 39.50. There's an uptick, another uptick. Okay, so the rejecting val, the thin spot 39.50 and 25, the bid up. Ooh, but it still slows down, and eventually we see a traversal to what looks like 41, and then we come back down and fill out the profile, which means we're going lower. Okay, so it goes lower. I mark it as value area 39.50 loss, even though the profile filled out. That should be it, hopefully. Yeah, because there's a lot more. Um, that was 1106, 311. I'll just cut this into a sec. First is a long val breakup, 33.25. Uh, an immediate loss on momentum. I think it should have been a short. I don't know why I was watching that. It probably traces lower. Yeah, it does. And the second is a short. It doesn't get hit. And the third is a momentum play off of the thin spot. Price stops, the seller steps in, the stop moves to 24.50. On what I thought was a value area, 905 is absorption. Somebody threw 343 on the ask, and then it moved to lower. That's really interesting. It shifted the VPOC of the day before selling off. 23.25. They're even in position there? No. Move up, banging short, 21.25, 20.75. Probably off of acceptance. Changing my tick size for the session. It's a good trade. And then 9. These are 2 errors. A long off of the value area high. There's the initial buy drive, and I get antsy and I want to chase. That's what I presume to happen here. Yeah. But the buyers are already there, so the downtick doesn't matter that much. And it jumped the LV into 23.25. These are just notes. 2050. 919. The ledge here, VPOC. Price stops. Back in the low volume area. Price comes back down a second time. I scratched. That trade should have been held. It wasn't balancing. It was crossing the VPOC down to this level at least, and then it sold off. Then we build a distribution there. This is 9:30. I took a nap because I was tired. Here's a short on the upper distribution of value. I think I get shaken out of this. No, price just teeters back and forth when I close. Huge buyer steps in. I'm probably gonna chase this. Yeah, chase to the low. We'll see. 2025 looks like an exit or a scratch here. Is it struggles? Yeah. A long here, but price isn't doing anything. Sellers keep knocking it lower. Scratch and a flip, probably. Coming back down into this LVM. This is a long. There's obvious sell pressure here. So I'm waiting for buyers to step in a market that doesn't exist, and they do. I would have gone short now. $17.75 closed. 1750 long off of the node, scratched it because price is coming lower. I got shaken out. We're back at VPOC. Price just sold off huge. Is this where this one right here? Okay, there's somebody spoofing 963 at '09, or it could be real order, but he showed up multiple times today. There it is again, '05s, $4 away. This has shown up all session, the entire morning. Well, the later towards 9:30 it showed up. In the early morning, it wasn't there. I assumed it was a spoof because price would come down to the level and he'd pull it, right? And then we trade through it, and there's no liquidity there, so we have this huge volume node at '09. That or they pulled it. I think he pulled it. It's technically traded, right? You know, it says let's go back. It's 730, 961, so it should be around 16. 18. So it's technically traded, but I don't see it anywhere unless he bought and it exploded the offer, like, all the way up there. Because there's no liquidity, but, wouldn't the price jump higher then if that happened? Anyways, obviously, I'm missing something. Price is selling lower. I get short, because of momentum, and then the moment I get short, it just goes against me. And I'm tracing it. Notice how that bid, that other 900 was pulled. 1587. Okay, so they rallied off of the low and they're back in the HVN now. You could put a trade here. The speed of tape is increasing. I think there's a trade right there at 1175. Looks like what I'm gonna do, but the tape is slowed down. I marketed in, so that's worse. The tape is slowed down now at 1213. If it kept doing this, I'd be more interested, but the tape is gone. So the demand is gone. It looks like they're gonna bring it lower. And the fill is bad. It should be 1175. So they step in again. So I would have just gotten shaken out for weak hands. But then it drifts lower. Yeah. And then I'm offside. So the fill sucked. One. Okay, anyways. Rallied without me off. Now it's in the thin spot. There's another spoof. I think this is where they fill in. Yeah. Okay, so 1025s, 1050s hit the thin spot. The tape slows down. There's a flicker lower, so sellers are interested. They're taking it lower. And then I went short the moment they hammered it. We see if it filled that guy at oh 05. That's the best trade I've ever done. I don't even think it would have been filled in a regular market. It looks like he pulled. I don't see a fill. Oh 05s would be, what was it, a buy order? So would it be all of this? Yeah, maybe. And I went short. I went short because that happened. And I interpreted it as this guy who had 1,000 contracts getting hit. And then, well, I thought he has 1,000 contracts he bought, and he was obviously spoofing them. So if they got filled, he has to sell off. So I'm going to take advantage of his trade, and price is going to move in my favor. So it moves against me 10 or so ticks, and I scratch. And I get short again. I'm marketing it, and I can just stick a limit somewhere up here next time. And then tape slows down at the highs, so I scratch again. Because the entry is so bad that even though I might be right, I'm just automatically offside however many ticks. And I think I flip long. Yeah, I flipped long at the VA. So I'm just reading in the noise too much. That guy pulls his order again. And I get short. And I'm looking for that big order at 95. I scratch at 96.50 because the order's removed. I thought I wrote there. There's the spoof again, baiting lower prices. Filled big order, played his puke. I think it would have shown up on the inside prints. It looks like I just caught a lucky short. And then I went long and played the rebound and watched it. If that was real, I don't remember. I remember trading it because it was so significant, but I don't see it on the tape. So, and I don't have time to go through it all. 779. Their test breakout. And these just look like notes. There's a buy at the low. It's 725. Don't watch me scratch because I'm scared. Instead of taking it to 80s. I wrote it to 80s. And then big VPOC. It looks like absorption. And then a huge traversal. a buy off of this node gets blown out because the node is too small. There's a short from 83 to VPOC. I scratch it because it comes closer to my entry. Oh, watching. Right. It's an all right one. Just short at the low of day. It's a horrible trade. Another short. These two trades suck. This node here looks like a breakout. Bought here, yeah. So it was doing this, and I got in. And we broke to 63.75. And speed of tape, I remember that one. Where's the plunge? 57. Right there. Yeah, and then the auction lower, the 2-3 tick front run. Okay, and then a scratch in that area. That's a good trade. LVN valve breakout. This is just me observing because I think 11 is 11:33. 5765. Okay, so we hit valve a bunch. That order is pulled and then stacked again, and it pushes us lower down to low of day. We break down. $49.50, which is here. I remember that. It's at 49.50 again. No, it's not. It's lower. So 49.51. 49.51, and now we're lower, so that level held. 45 below 44.50 again, so that's another value area. Then we sell off of that, and we're back in a low day, forming a balance. An auction, 5 tick bid stack off 475, 4175 at 11:49. There it is. Yeah. So 98, and then boop. Yeah. Bit of a slow one, but that's how it works. That's what I call the plunge. And the rest was nothing. 9:30, 11:06, review half. How long is this? 27 minutes. This is 11:05. Okay. right here, right here, 51.25. Price stops the higher volume node, but price has been traversing upwards. So expecting a seller to be here when price has been traversing upwards is kind of backwards, especially because price is balanced there. The combination between the active buyer and the stopping of the auction here, but more so the active buyer, really marks this level redundant. Also became because we came off the low of day. But most importantly, the seller, a limit there trying to compress the move. Okay, we stopped some demand from buyers. Some more demand, time to get out. We stopped again. Okay, good. And then we traverse. And then 58.25, sellers step in. We're back at the LVM. We stopped again, but the sellers are strong. If I had to make a decision here, it would be short. And I'd look for 53.75. And if price stopped like it did now, I'd get out. So I don't know how accurate the distribution is. We jumped back up to the VAH. Right. Here's another short. Yeah, time to get out. This looks like the acceptance of the distribution. So and then the book started lagging. This is the last one, which is kind of a mess. Towards the end, I was just losing it. A good short here, closed for a few ticks along here at the edge of the distribution. I want to see if I scratch that for a win. Should scratch it right there. Scratched it right there. Nothing going on. Scratched before the further move down. A short, looking for acceptance, and then in the face of big buyers. Another short. Oh, that's a long. Based on this big order, expecting to get filled. Should pull it right now, like I did. That's a really good trade, even though it's 2 or 3 ticks. I like those. And then my computer slows down. I'd hold it because of the thin spot, even though price stopped. I'd look for 68.25, which I think is what I was looking for here. And a buyer stepped in and took it higher, and I closed for a loss. And that was a long. I scalped the buyer. Seller in control and slow tape, which is a good combination. 72.75. Short prices. Right there, 772 with the notches is good. But it went down to 770. Short down to 767. It's a big trade. Scratched for 3 ticks. Wrong move. I can try the short again at 774. Yeah, because it sold off. And then it closed above 774 and rallied. My internet cut out. Triple sevens. Va. It's a good trade. A's. Scratched. Did I scratch or did I close? Tape stops there. Doesn't hit 80s. Okay, I closed. And then she sells off. To triple sevens again. Breaks through triple sevens. 7-5, 7-4. Comes back up. No notes here. And then towards the end of the day, the tape just sped up so fast. I didn't have time to write all this stuff. I didn't really do that bad today, to be honest. I still did bad, but Val return pullback. That's good. Good trade. That's a trade at the LVN that needs to be scratched. Yeah. A buy at 68.25. And price shot lower on the buy. There was already a seller there. I'm kind of losing my mind here. That could have been a short. There's a real short, right? Continuation. Did it go all the way down? Yeah, to the HBN 63. So it was an easy trade. Where's this? Another good short. What is this? A bad short. A decent short. It just wasn't giving. The trade wasn't working. And this is where I get harebrained frustrated because I try to short like 4 times and nothing happens. Big reveal. So DPL. P&L. Display. Price display format. Profit. Profit loss format. Okay, ready? Points. 2 points? Dude. No way. No way. No way. That's nuts. What? I was almost certain. I was 100% certain I went negative today. Wow. Okay, okay, alright. What was I gonna write? Oh, the 2. One was getting better meaning bias through noise. I'll write a Substack article on that one. Let me just open it now, actually. This one. Cognitive overload review. Mark Make note of 2 positive changes in review. Okay. 2 positive changes. Getting better at real market movements from ES tick noise is one. The other is slowly being on the IE entries, IE comma entries. Did I have more? Recognizing the plunger trades. Being aware of being more aware of FOMO and emotion and how they impact the trades. Those are the 4 good things I did today. Oh, and the more of a playbook, comma, and 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 being aware of manifesto, the order to play short term good trades. You have to be watching the market long term. I'll see you guys tomorrow.